Imagine this. Wake up, phone, scroll, gotta check those notifications.
It's obviously the world needs you to open up Snapchat at school. More screens, staring at projectors, not being able to understand this class.
Oh my God. Pause. I'm asking you to imagine this, but what is there to imagine? This is our life. This is our reality. The noise never fades, the screens never end, and somehow we never feel rested. Hi, I'm Vanshika Khanna, and today I want to share something that we all desperately need, but often neglect. Can you hear that? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call silence. I invite you to join me in the season of silence, a time where we intentionally stop refreshing our feeds and start refreshing our minds. Now, a question I'm sure many of you have is, why does silence even matter? Well, for starters, silence is something that is not just something that we want, but something that we need. A 2021 study found that when participants were asked to perform in a concentration study, those who performed in silence not only experienced lower stress levels, but less mental overload. So essentially, when we don't give our brain a break, it doesn't just get tired, it gets burnt out. And a lot of times, that burnout can show up in forms like procrastination. I've experienced this firsthand, and there's a small little story that I would like to share with you. One beautiful sunny day, I came back home from school, tired like most days, and there was something that I did that it wasn't my proudest moment, but I did it anyways. I had a test the following day, and instead of studying, I'll get to that in a moment, I didn't study. I told myself I deserve a break from all the studying I do because I'm a teenager. I also want to have fun. Studying isn't my only passion. And so what I did was I realized in hindsight, I wasn't trying to avoid studying. No, I was avoiding silence. Because it was in the quiet that my brain wouldn't stop talking. And it was screaming at me, "You're gonna fail that test." So I did what any rational person would do. I started a brand new TV show, and that too the night before my test. And let's just say, if my grade was a stock, investors would be terrified because it wasn't looking great for me. But then here's the thing I realized, because as a more mature person, or at least older, I now realize that the burnout I was experiencing was not from academic stress. It was from never letting my mind be quiet. Silence is especially hard when it's our brains that are not the ones turning off. Because sure, we can scroll out of the tabs of all of our social media platforms. But how easy is it to scroll out of the tabs of our mind? The mind is what we have with us constantly. And so something I realized is that I would have to eventually be accustomed to learning with silence. Silence is something that we often take for granted, something that we don't realize the importance of unless it's too late. And so, silence. The thing with silence is that procrastination taught me that not only do I not understand silence, I too am not comfortable with it. And so, with that procrastination, I learned something else. I learned that I need to start to imbibe silence into my life. And there's a small little story that I would like to share with you about silence, and I hope that it will truly change your perspective. It is about Buddha. One day, a disciple went up to Buddha and asked for the ultimate truth, expecting a profound, earth-shattering answer. But to the disciples' surprise, Buddha simply sat there in complete and utter silence. And at first, the disciple was confused because this is not the answer that they were expecting. They were expecting for something more. But as the silence stretched, the disciple began to realize that sometimes the answers we seek are not in words, but in stillness. But silence isn't something that only the disciples struggled with. No, adults deal with it too. Actually, probably more than anyone. They're not only dealing with life, work, family, and everything in between. So asking them to carve out hours in their day and dedicate it to stillness while they're watching the laundry pile grow, you guessed it, and grow, well, again, that's not achievable. So what does this mean? Does this mean that we have to allow the chaos of noise rule our lives? Does this mean we have to live in a constant state of emotional exhaustion? Or is there a way that we can cultivate our very own season of silence for all people alike in a world that seems allergic to quiet? And the answer is yes. Yes, we can. But there's a small catch. Silence doesn't just knock at our doors, beautifully wrapped, ready to be served. No, we have to create the space for silence. And ironically, the first step, boredom. We have to start taking boredom breaks. A lot of times, we treat boredom like something to fix, something that we have to cure like an illness, but truly, boredom is the front door to silence. So instead of closing the door and shutting out boredom, how about we let it in? Because we might just realize that boredom has something to say. Number 2, the one-task mind. We multitask like it's a sport. We listen to music while studying. We text while watching TV. We scroll while eating. How about we do one thing at a time? At first, it will feel weird, like something's missing. But I promise you, if you just give it some time, that missing feeling will eventually transform into presence. And last, but definitely not least, dolce far niente. In Italian, there's this phrase, dolce far niente, which means the sweetness of doing nothing. A lot of times we treat silence like something to perfect, like when it's 7:47 p.m. and we tell ourselves, oh, we'll start studying at 8, because that's a perfect time. But for silence, there exists no such thing as perfection. When we stop trying to perfect perfection and we start trying to embrace silence, now that is when we truly get to live it. And so, the season of silence is not about shutting out the world. No. It is about tuning in. Without practice, silence can feel daunting, terrifying, and uncomfortable. And it is in our human nature to avoid the uncomfortable. So what do? We resort to escapism. We do anything in our power to avoid these feelings. And if that is our condition now, then what about in 20 years? Are we okay with having a generation that can't sit alone with their thoughts? Are we okay with having a generation so overstimulated that they don't know who they are without a screen telling them? Are we okay? If the generation before us didn't value thinking, reflection, and real connection, we wouldn't be the people we are today. What could the power of silence teach us? If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be us now. Every generation shapes the next, so what are we leaving behind? As I close, I ask for only one thing. Tonight, before you sleep, please, please, please don't reach for your phone. Don't fill the silence. At first, it will be awkward, and I'm asking you, let it be awkward. Let it be uncomfortable, because then you might just realize that silence is not empty. Silence holds every answer that you've been looking for. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.